Why did you ask me to do this interview?
Well, I've been writing a blog now for about a year, and I thought it might be an interesting idea to try something different on my year anniversary of being diagnosed. I thought rather than write a blog entry, I've had sort of a couple of audios on there as well as some pictures. It might be quite interesting to do sort of a visual one instead, so that people could see me when I'm talking.
For new joiners to your blog, would you like to explain what the blog's about?
Yeah, so I started the blog a year ago when I was diagnosed with splenic lymphoma. For anyone who's interested in the backstory to that, it's sort of captured in the first few entries, but it was more an aid to me to help me sort of discuss what I was through with people, try and get an idea of how it made me feel, try and get it down. And also, it was a really great aid in terms of that really awkward conversation of talking to people and saying, so I've been to the doctor and I've had some bad news. And then that conversation is horrible, and had it a few times. And actually, once you've got a blog up, it was much easier to, people see the blog, they'd sort of digest it a little bit. And when we sat down, they'll be like, oh, I've read your blog. That's pretty shit. And I'll say, yeah, it is pretty shit. And then we can have a bit more of a sort of genuine conversation around it. Whereas I think initially it was the having to break news to people was tough. I've also found it quite a good sort of just a thought slate for me to write things down on all sorts of topics. It's not just about lymphoma. It was to begin with, but it'd be a bit boring if it was only about that. So I've tried to vary it a bit, keep it interesting, but also come back to the core reason of why I was doing it time and again. When I get my blood test results, when new research comes out, stuff like that. So I try not to deviate too much. But it's basically a catch-all for me. And I've got a few followers I know who are also suffering from the same condition, or if not, at least a similar. And I hope it's been helpful. I know that it's had about at last check about 18,000 views over the course of a year. Interestingly, it's also had sort of 80 countries, people from 80 countries have a look at it as well. So it's obviously been received relatively well. And some of the comments I've had have been great. It's made it all worthwhile. People have sort of said how happy they were that there's a resource out there. Whereas when you look, and I know this from personal experience, when you first look, it's all very dry, and you get all these statistics like X 5-year survival rate and 10-year survival rate and stuff like that, opposed to actually people can live a long time with this sort of thing. And some of the people I've spoken to are people who are quite young. Diagnosed with it like myself.
What types of people read your blog?
So it seems to be all sorts. I've obviously got some friends who read it, so shout out to them. Hello everyone. My family as well. But also I've had people who sort of either themselves are sufferers of something similar, or indeed family of sufferers. Because the particular condition I've got is diagnosed specifically in over 60s usually. It was about a 1 in a million chance, I got told. So, as people say, should have played the lottery. That might have been a better way of spending that chance. But because it's so rare in people my age, there was no resource, as I said. So quite a lot of the people who read it, I think, are fellow survivors who sort of deal with the condition themselves.
And what advice can you give to fellow people with the condition who might be finding your blog for the first time?
So, if you've been diagnosed, there's really very little I can say to you that will help. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that everyone has to go through this in their own way. This blog is testimony to the fact that at times it's been really tough. Also, I've lied about how I'm doing at times in the blog, and I can say that now because I'm a year in and kind of much more on an even keel. But for the first 4 months, there were times of saying, "Oh yeah, I'm fine," but actually it's because my family were reading it and my friends were reading it, and also I wanted to be fine. So it was easier to say, "Actually, I'm feeling fine. I'm in a good mood. I'm kind of reconciled to it." Whereas actually, it does take time to get to terms with it, and a lot of that is. You have to go through, the traditional stages of acceptance and denial and that sort of things. but you do end up just railing at the world. You're just frustrated at how this has happened to you, how unfair it is, how you've had a relatively normal life, you've never had any issues, and then suddenly out of left field you've got this condition that is fundamentally going to take years out of your life. So you're not going to reach the age you'd hoped. You feel like you've had some years stolen, and that's very difficult to accept. It was tough, and I think I went off the rails a little bit. I mean, not in a sort of tangible, let's drive really fast and go base jumping and stuff like that, but it certainly shook me. And I'm a pretty sanguine person. I mean, yeah, I get competitive. Yeah, I get frustrated at times, but I don't tend to get angry too much and stuff like that. I'm quite even, I like to think. But this was really hard to take. And going back to the question of what I can advise people who are just being diagnosed, I mean, you're not alone. You are not alone. If you branch it out further to people who suffer cancer, nearly 1 in 2 men will now suffer from cancer at some point in their lives. It's going to be 1 in 3 women, just over that. And that's a huge statistic. So whilst you've just been diagnosed or you're a week down the diagnosis path, actually it's not just you, and there are people you can talk to. And I found it really helpful to talk to other people. The dry statistics, I mean, I read some blood journals, I read some of these case studies, and they talked about percentage survival rates and how long to live, 5 and 10 years and stuff like that. And that's heartrending, that's horrible. I mean, you read it and you think, shit, I've only got a 50% chance of getting to 5 years. And it's not like that at all. You've got to realise that all of these case studies are sort of statistics. They're over for 200 people. You're an individual. We've all got different factors involved in this. In my case, this condition affects people who are over 60 traditionally. So those case studies are saying, yeah, someone who's 80 who gets splenic lymphoma might not live 10 years. But that doesn't mean they've died from the splenic lymphoma. It means they've got to 87 and died, or 89 and died, and consequently they change those statistics to make it look worse than it is. You also get this other thing called left arm bias, which is quite interesting, which is just because it's the average, if you get an average of life expectancy, doesn't mean everyone has the same thing. You might find there's a lot of people who are in bad condition anyway. It's a side factor, and consequently something else kills them quite early on. And there's a lot of survivors on the right hand which extend out. There's a blog article about it rather than me explain it. But the core question is, I can't tell you anything. Everyone deals with it in their own way. There's no easy way. There's no simple thing to say, hey, this will resolve it. This is a silver bullet, and it does take time to get used to it. But you do get there, you do. And I mean, day to day, obviously I think about it when it comes up, but far less. And I've been very lucky. So I know people who've had treatment, I know people who've had complications with it, and they're dealing with a lot more than I am. So, each person is individual, and it's all hard and it's all unfair. And it's just a case of realising that you're not alone and you can get through this.
Has the diagnosis changed you?
I don't know. That's a difficult one for me to answer. I would say I was always quite a driven person anyway. I always had my goals. I always wanted to achieve them. If we look back to before I got diagnosed last year at 30, I'd had goals like I wanted to visit every continent before I was 30 and set up my own company and stuff like that. So I've always wanted to sort of push forward and achieve things that mean something to me. They may not mean anything to anyone else. But I think it has changed me. I think it's made me a nicer person in some ways. It's also made me more understanding. I do appreciate when people are going through difficult times now, and I think it's just given me a point of reference to when people are finding situations really tough. Before now, I've had a relatively charmed life. I've been very lucky, very, very lucky. And I still am lucky, I thank my luck every day. But before now, I was kind of just blasé. I was like everyone else. I was like, I'm going to live till I'm 70, 80. I've planned my life. I know what I'm doing. I've got, this is what I'm going to do. I have kids, blah, 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 blah. There's no time pressure. It's fine, whatever. And then you feel like someone's taken something from you. And really, it's just someone taking your expectations away of what you're going to get. But it does change you, and I think it makes you more introspective to a degree. You certainly think about things more. And also, some of my other things I wanted to do. So I always wanted to publish a book, and I'd been rejected a couple of times and written sort of 6 or 7. And I decided, well, you know what, I'm just going to self-publish. I don't care. I really don't care. What's the worst that'll happen? Everyone will hate it. Fine. But at least I've done it, and it's something I wanted to do. So I think in answer to your question, it has changed me. It's made me more determined to do what I want to do, and it's also made me more conscious of what time I do have. And so, you got to treat every day as something to be enjoyed. And if that enjoyment is sitting in front of the TV, that's fine. You've worked during the day, you've earned that. Not everyone can be manic 24/7 doing all these stuff, all this stuff and achieving goals and stuff like that. But you are more aware of the sort of medium term. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Well, it's business speak, but actually it's kind of relevant if you're not sure how long you've got. And blood tests are really difficult in that sense. So kind of bring it home every time you've got one of those.
So you mentioned 5-year plans. It's been 12 months since you've been writing this blog. What are your plans for the next 12 months?
It's a good question. So I suppose I could break that into a couple of things. In terms of health, what are my plans? To get no treatment. Yay! To be healthy. To try and live as healthy as possible. So that fundamentally I don't do anything that reduces my chances, or increases my chances of needing treatment. So in the next 12 months, I hope I just have tests. My values are increased, but not significantly, and we just go on from there. In terms of my personal life, I'd like to bring out a second book, hopefully before Christmas. Everyone likes Christmas presents. And I want to move to a house in the country. So before I was diagnosed with pootling along with a house in London, lovely house. It was kind of an agreement between myself and Joe that we'd have this house for 5 years, and then we'd look at getting a house in the country with a big garden and sort of doing what was one of my goals. She's been very good about it. We've kind of pushed that forward somewhat. So we're at the moment talking about getting a house. We've got the mortgage going through, and it's just taking forever. But in the next 12 months, hopefully we'll have it sorted and move in. I'd like the company to continue going well. I really enjoy that. I mean, it's interesting. I run an IT company with my best friend, which is great, and we started it together. And actually, in some ways, it's been really good because I had a job before that I wasn't necessarily enamoured with. It's always difficult having someone else as your boss. But actually being your own boss and doing something you enjoy on a day-to-day basis, it's hard. I've got goals and, we've got to make ends meet and this and that. But really it keeps me focused. And if I got diagnosed with this and I was doing something I hated, I would have got out of it. But actually it was more a case of I'm going to continue to do this because I do enjoy it and it is fun. So I suppose more of the same of that, but try and keep building it to greater and better things because everyone enjoys that. Release a book and move house. And that sounds quite tiring, so maybe I'll leave it at that.
And how would you like to end your first video blog for your readers?
I suppose I'd just like to say thank you to all my friends who have been there for me when I'm difficult or a bit of a dick or down or anything like that. I don't often lean on people. I don't enjoy doing it. I much prefer being the person that people lean on, listening to their problems, stuff like that. It hasn't been easy in the last year, and people have been most kind. And all I can say is thank you for sticking with me. I couldn't ask for better people to have around me. It's been great, and even when I was emotional, having difficulties and stuff like that, it's been great. And not just friends, obviously my family as well. I'm very close to my family. They've been great. Everyone's been great around me. So I'd like to just take this as an opportunity to thank them all and say, hopefully the next 12 months will be a lot less challenging. I'd also like to say that if this is the first time you're looking at this blog, I am trying to raise awareness. I've also been trying to raise money for not just research, but also sort of pastoral care, helping people who are in this situation. And consequently, if I'm giving all the proceeds from my book to charity, I also got a link on my site which you can go straight in and donate, and I've run an event or two to do so. So I'm going to continue to raise money, and if you can give generously, that'd be great. And then, sorry, going back to the people who have just found it or who themselves are sufferers, hello fellow traveller. I hope we can continue to talk, and if you've got anything you want to bring to the blog, please do. I mean, it's a resource, and I hope people find it useful, and I hope people like it. And if they can comment on this and say whether they've found it interesting or helpful or funny or crap or whatever, and they want to see more of, then please do. So, I mean, again, I can only thank you for listening, and let's hope that in a year's time I'll be looking here, slightly older, not in the same place, but without having to have treatment between now and then, and just living and enjoying life. And I hope the same for all of you. I hope anyone else who is suffering, be strong, try and get through it. I think it's one of those things that it's your own journey, and you can have people help you, but it's something you have to push through yourself. And there are going to be bad days, but just remember that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's always other things you could be doing in life once you kick it, or once you get your condition under control, or take whatever treatment you need. And yeah, I just wish you all the best, really. We done? Thank you very much.